Thanks for clicking on the video. If you like what you hear, please drop a comment and say hi. It'd help me out a lot.
They called it Ulf Cold, the wolf cold. A winter so fierce, even the gods bit their tongues. On a ragged coastline, blackened by fire and churned with blood-soaked snow, 100 warriors stood, ringed in steel, rage and prayer. Behind them, smoke. Before them, a tide of enemies, foreign banners snapping like whips in the wind. The Vikings of Nordfolk had made their last stand, and they loved it. Bjorn the Red, tall as two men and louder than thunder, screamed a curse at the gods as he split a foreigner from groin to grin. His beard was frozen stiff with blood, his shield cracked in half, so he wore it like a gauntlet instead. Beside him, Aska, war sister of the flame, danced through smoke with twin axes, one eye gouged, smile untouched. She laughed as fire kissed her furs. "I see no Valkyries yet," she bellowed. The line held, then buckled, then surged again. It wasn't war, it was opera. A mad, screaming, bone-snapping opera, sung in snarls and sword song. For hours they fought beneath a grey sky. Then something impossible happened. A crack. Not of lightning, not of stone. A hole opened in the air behind them. No, a wound. It glowed like molten silver. A ring, a mirror. A voice came through, not spoken, but implanted inside the mind. Subjects acquired, preparing jump sequence. Genetic resilience noted. Stand by. Most would run, most would scream. But these were not most. Bjorn spat into the snow. A new enemy? He grinned. Good. The warriors barely had time to nod before the sky ripped apart. Every Viking on that cursed field vanished in a flash of unnatural light. The battlefield emptied, leaving only blood, smoke, and the silence of confused crows. And so the wolves were taken. And so the gods went quiet. The walls of the observation chamber pulsed with clean blue light, sterile, calm, designed for comfort. 4 minds shared the space, floating in perfect symmetry. They had no names, only designations. Kasari tier thinkers, bred to oversee the galaxy's crucible protocol. They were tall, thin, and elegant, eyes layered with translucent membranes. Their limbs bifurcated at the elbow, allowing fine motor control while maintaining superior reach. They moved like silk underwater. Their thoughts were sharper than obsidian, and they were utterly certain they were the superior race in every category. These are Homo sapiens, mid-Iron Age, isolated genetic cluster, came the board analysis from the synth archivist. Culturally primed for violence, but biologically soft. Low processing capacity, primitive fear responses, limited group cohesion outside kin structures. The Crucible was meant to test potential combat stock, to pull from primitive worlds and assess combat potential. Most species failed within the first cycle. Humans it passed before, but they were different now. Softened, muted by civilization. This batch, however, was ancient, pre-empire, pre-unification, pulled from Earth's dark ages, likely a mistake in the time-splice grid. Containment field integrity? Asked one. Stable, replied another. They are tribal, confused, mostly male, awaiting mental orientation protocols. They turned to the viewing screen, and then the room fell very quiet. The first Viking stepped into the stasis chamber, 7 feet tall, chest bare, arms carved with scars and ink, hair braided with bone and animal sinew, eyes like storm-lit oceans, scanning the sterile walls like a wolf in a cage. He said nothing. He just stared. A second stepped in behind him, then a third, then dozens. One alien leaned forward. What? What are they doing? They weren't panicking. They weren't pacing or pleading or screaming in terror like most fresh specimens. No, they were laughing, a low, growling kind of laughter. One beat his chest. Another slammed his axe against the floor, letting sparks fly. A woman with blood still drying on her cheek raised a war horn and blew it inside the observation room. The walls trembled. Do they understand? Yes, came a shaky voice from the analytics drone. They understood only one part of the transmission. A great battle, a worthy enemy. The Kasari had seen thousands of species. They'd watched titans fall, apex hunters beg for death, entire empires surrender in silence. They had never seen anything like this. These weren't just warriors. These were joyful lunatics. Feral storm gods in human skin. One of the observers stepped back involuntarily. We should adjust their enemy simulation parameters. Too late, came the quiet reply. They're already in the arena, and for the first time in 200 years, the tier thinkers logged something unexpected. Emotional disturbance. Fear. Squad Karak 12 had never failed a cleanse. 10 wars, 6 extinction-class purges, dozens of elite combat simulations, no casualties, no emotion, no deviation. They were the sharpened fang of the Drexari Dominion, and even the Council of Ancients whispered when the Ashbourne strain deployed. They were beautiful in their precision. Each warrior stood 8 feet tall, skin a gunmetal charcoal hue, cross-woven with ridges that pulsed faintly with violet biocircuitry. Their faces were smoothed into plated helms. No eyes, no mouths, just a fractal lens visor over a predatory jawline. Each moved with predatory grace, in sync without command. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Thoughts were networked, tactics uploaded, personalities minimized. Only one retained an individual designation: Crime Talon Zarek, the commander and first of the strain. He stood before the weapon rack, sliding his hands across the instruments of death. A plasma halberd, a vibro shard launcher, a coiled blade that could phase through armor and bone alike. Perfect tools for imperfect foes. Protocol AI calmly said. No warrior flinched. No warrior questioned. Zarek's thoughts flared for a moment. Tactical projections, elimination patterns. He absorbed the human visuals being fed through the chamber feed. Crude armor, no energy shielding, stone and iron implements. Zarek tagged them as Tier 0 combatants. Primitive, predictable. Psychological evaluation. Subject morale, elevated. Displays of ritual aggression. Unusual confidence index. Advised caution. Zarek paused. Unusual confidence? He blinked twice, which in Drexari neural code was the equivalent of a shrug. Irrelevant. Behind him, his 9 squadmates locked their weapons into place. Their bodies hummed as the blood thrusters primed, causing the air to warp faintly around them. Their boots magnetized, their exoskeletal frames tightened like war drums. They were not soldiers, they were exterminators. Arena loading in 30 ticks, the system intoned. Opposition, 100 hostile primitives. Expected casualties, 0. Zarek stepped toward the gate. His mind touched his squad's collective one last time. No survivors, no souvenirs, no mercy. The chamber sealed, the platform rumbled, and the apex killers descended to meet the primitives. The gates opened with clinical precision. Hydraulic hiss, magnetic pulse, a slow rise, perfectly timed to expose the field in graduated sweeps. Zarek stepped into the light, flanked by his 9. Their boots clicked in unison against the obsidian metal floor of the Crucible Arena, a sacred war stage carved into the bones of a long-dead moon. Above them, 10,000 spectators, dignitaries, warlords, tacticians, and gene scribes watching through force fields in predictive HUDs. The Drexari squad spread into a spear formation, flanking angles, calculating movements before the enemy even arrived. Telemetry locked, atmospheric pressure optimal, opponent energy signatures minimal, came the AI's emotionless murmur. Zarek's head turned slightly. He scanned the opposite tunnel, the dark mouth from which their prey would emerge. He raised his halberd. The standard signal. A declaration. We begin with stillness. We end with silence. Then, a sound. Not metal, not weaponized. Something else entirely. Laughter. A bellow echoed from the tunnel opposite. Then another, and another. Out of the shadow stepped a man, naked to the waist, his muscles streaked with soot and paint. He held a wooden mug in one hand and a severed boar leg in the other, dripping with grease. He grinned. Behind him, 100 warriors emerged from the dark. Some wore fur cloaks and chainmail. Some wore nothing but blood and war paint. Many held weapons, axes, swords, spears. More importantly, they held food, drink, laughter. One woman had a chicken under her arm. Another shoved a full keg across the ground and slammed it open with the hilt of a knife. They didn't march. They didn't salute. They celebrated, as if this were a festival, as if death were just another dance. In the control chamber above, one of the Kasari observers leaned in. "What are they doing?" The answer came from the synth archivist, voice unsteady. They believe this is a test from their gods, that the afterlife must be earned in war. I believe they're grateful. Zarek remained motionless, visor unreadable, but the algorithms behind it faltered. These weren't panicked primitives. These weren't confused recruits. These were apex predators, and they were happy to be here. Across the arena, one of the Vikings, a man with a thunder-shaped tattoo across his chest, raised his drinking horn and bellowed something in a language the system couldn't translate. But the meaning was clear. "You brought us meat. You brought us beer. Now bring us your dead." The Vikings cheered, slamming weapons together. Some charging forward early, before being pulled back by laughing comrades. The alien death squad remained still. But, for the first time in their history, their weapons registered nervous tremors. The gates finished rising. The crucible clock began. And in that moment, between the charge and the clash, the Drexari saw what they had actually summoned. They hadn't called prey. They'd invited wolves. The battlefield was not soil and stone. It was metallic ash and jagged bone. A forged landscape built over eons, beneath a cracked moon. The crucible arena spiraled out like a sunken coliseum, its tiers shaped from the remains of extinct worlds, warped by gravity engines and bound with xenotech. Each corner bore the relics of a different empire's death. One side was carved with the skulls of Threxian titans, another layered with broken tanks from a machine uprising no one dared remember. High above, 10 floating obelisks marked the ancient gods of war. They did not shine, they watched. Jarek and his apex killers waited on one side of the killing field, motionless and ready. Across the scorched field, the Vikings reveled. One warrior lifted his horn and bellowed a note so low and deep, it sounded like the mountain itself had learned to growl. The others responded, stomping their feet in rhythm. The sound echoed off the arena's curved walls, a living drumbeat of impending violence. Then came a song. It wasn't melodic in the way alien minds understood. It was raw, wild, guttural, a harmony of rage and joy sung in an ancient tongue. A war hymn carried across snow, sea, and battlefield. "We come not for gold, nor for gods, but for glory, and the howl of a worthy death," they chanted as they banged swords against shields, some dragging the edge of their axes along the ground to make sparks rise like fireflies in the dust. A woman leapt up onto a broken slab of stone, holding her spear high. Her cloak whipped behind her, caught in the artificial wind. She howled. The others joined in, a chorus of wolves. Up in the council viewing towers, dignitaries leaned forward. Some whispered. One observer muttered, "They're not just eager, they're celebrating." Then, as if on some silent cue, the Vikings stopped, all at once. The singing ceased, the laughter faded. Now, they looked across the battlefield, into the silent armored formation of the Drexari Apex Killers, and they studied them. No fear, no hesitation. One man smirked. Another cracked his neck. Someone in the back farted, and a ripple of laughter followed. But it was a sharp laughter. "Ready?" The woman on the stone leaned forward, narrowed her eyes, and whispered, "They look like gods." She spat.
Let's see if they bleed.
And across the void between them, for the first time, the apex killers registered something strange in their neural sync. Enemy morale anomalously high. Tactical analysis incomplete. Combat projection unclear. The Crucible didn't like that. The arena quieted, not by command, by instinct. Even the gods above, if they still lived, seemed to listen. And in that breathless silence, 10,000 watching souls asked themselves the same thing. Who are the monsters here? Tactical initiation sequence. Engaged. Target proximity. Confirmed. Weapon systems. Optimal. Opponent behavior. Erratic. Disorganized. Initiative. Ours. Zarek lifted his halberd, blade humming with polarized charge. His warriors moved in perfect synchronicity. 10 apex killers, surging forward with mechanical grace. Their boots barely stirred the dust. Their formation spread, splitting into 2 spear points with mirrored timing. This is where the enemy falters. This is where the screams begin. It had happened 1,000 times before, but not this time. The Vikings moved too, not a heartbeat later, simultaneously, as if they'd been waiting, not for the attack, but for the invitation. A man at the front, bald, missing an eye, his beard tied with bones, screamed like a crow. His axe came down in a thunderous arc as he charged. Not alone. All of them, all at once. Some dropped their mugs mid-sprint, others threw them, smashing them into the arena floor as a kind of declaration. A woman slammed a 2-headed hammer against her shield 3 times, then sprinted straight into the Drexery flanking line. And the others followed her. No command, no signal. Only a shared, ancient instinct. Kill them first. Zarek's HUD flared, enemy movement accelerating. Predicted trajectory, invalid. Sync loss, combat timing breach. Analyzing, one of the Drexari on the left side hesitated. Just long enough. A spear pierced his side and pulled him down. Not clean, not fast. A woman with tangled red hair and a rusted chain belt followed it up by leaping onto his back and biting the side of his helmet. She bit through. It wasn't combat. It was a storm. Above, in the observation towers, alien strategists gasped as the formation maps blurred. The predictive overlays collapsed. Enemy markers were too fast, too wild. Every simulation unraveled. One Kasari commander whispered, "They're not fighting for victory, they're fighting for glory." Down on the field, a Viking man tore a plasma blade from a Drexari's gauntlet and used it to stab the alien's throat, howling through the blood mist like a berserker made of stone and myth. Another group formed a human wedge, axes up, shields slammed together, driving straight through the precision ranks like fire through silk. Zarek saw it all. They shouldn't be able to. He parried an axe just in time. Too late for the Drexari on his right. She was dragged into a knot of 5 humans, her armor torn open in seconds. The apex killers had always controlled the rhythm, always dictated the pace. Now the rhythm was a drumbeat of bones, and the pace, it belonged to the beasts. Zarek stepped back. For the first time in 800 battles, he recalculated. Zarek had been trained to control fear. He'd been engineered for it. His neural core slowed time in moments like this, highlighting threats, projecting probabilities, directing reflexes through embedded subroutines. But now, threat inputs, 173% over median variance. Formational cohesion, compromised. Enemy behavior, unknown. He blocked a downward axe swing with his halberd shaft, barely. The impact jarred through his arms, through the armor, something he hadn't felt in decades. The Viking who'd struck him, a towering brute with braids like coiled ropes and teeth missing from past brawls, roared and pressed in, swinging again with reckless, merciless joy. Zarek swept low, and caught the man's leg. The brute fell, and then screamed as Zarek drove the halberd through his throat, pinning him to the steel beneath. One down, but for every Viking who fell, 3 surged forward. A woman with a cracked helm took a plasma bolt to the chest. She staggered, then screamed a final insult in her tongue, and hurled her sword like a javelin. It missed. She collapsed, didn't move again. Zarek scanned the kill zones. 12 Drexari dead, half as many Vikings, and yet the humans weren't slowing down. They were pressing in, using their dead as springboards, laughing through blood. One fell, another stepped forward, eyes wide, mouth grinning, blade dripping. They have no chain of command, he thought. No synchrony, no structure. But he knew that wasn't true. They did have structure. It was just different, like a storm structure, like fires. A Drexari on Zarek's flank screamed, a sound Zarek had never heard from one of his own. A Viking woman had buried an axe into the killer's neck and kicked him backward before being impaled herself on a Drexari blade. Blood for blood. Zarek turned toward a cluster of them. 6 or 7 Vikings surging through the left breach. He adjusted for proximity attack. He dropped 2 with pulse shots. The third got too close. He ducked, barely, and the axe passed where his head had been. He drove his goldness into the Viking's gut and lifted the man with augmented strength, then slammed him to the ground with a crack of spine and skull. The man gasped once, then stilled. I am adapting, Zarek thought. I will survive this. Then he heard the chant again. Glory! Glory! It came like thunder. Glory! Glory! They were singing again, even with broken bones, even while dying. He looked up, just in time to see one of his lieutenants fall to 3 blades at once. The Viking warriors didn't gloat. They didn't slow. They just turned to find the next. Probability of victory. SEO. Calculating. The algorithm didn't finish. Zarek realized he wasn't in a battle. He was in a legend. And his name might be the footnote. Her name was never spoken aloud. Not in this place. Names were for those who needed to be remembered. She didn't fight for memory. She fought for the feeling. That moment where the swing lands, where your lungs burn and the world narrows to the space between your blade and their heart. That was the real glory. She leapt from the mound of twisted metal with a scream that echoed across the arena walls. Her boots hit the ground hard, cracking something that hissed and twitched beneath her. A Drexari. Dead now. Didn't matter. 2 more stepped forward, mirrored movements, identical stances. She hated that. No flavor, she snarled. No soul. The first one struck, downward slice, with that glowing blade of theirs. She didn't parry. She ducked. Low, too low. Grabbed dirt and debris and flung it into his face. The alien staggered. His partner stepped to cover. Textbook move. But she didn't attack. She ran right through them, shoulder first, into the gut of the first, spinning and swinging upward with her axe, carving through armor like tearing bark off a tree. Blood, sparks, a scream. The second Drexari was better, faster. He kicked her hard in the side. She tumbled, rolled, slammed into a jagged column of alien stone. Everything dimmed. She coughed. Blood. Definitely blood. But then, she heard it. The others. Glory! Glory! They were still here, still fighting, still singing. She rose, one eye swollen shut, jaw cracked and already bruising. She screamed through broken teeth. The Drexari came at her fast, sweeping low. She ducked again, then slipped. Too slow. His blade sliced across her thigh, deep. She felt her leg buckle, fire shoot through her nerves. Still standing. Still got one more in me, she growled. She grabbed the fallen shield, threw it. It bounced off his arm, barely phased him. But then someone else slammed into him from the side. Another Viking, younger, laughing like a lunatic, with a jagged blade and a torn shirt. Together, They ended him. Quick.
Thanks, she muttered.
You'll owe me a drink, he called, already running to the next kill. She looked around. So many were down. Some rose again, some didn't. But they had done it. They had shattered the Drexari line. From above, it looked like a wildfire spreading across a forest of steel. The alien formation, once pristine, was breaking into scattered duels, desperate regroupings, and pockets of resistance overwhelmed by human madness. Alien commanders screamed into comms. Strategists flipped tables. No pattern, one of them hissed. No end. And in the center of it all, Vikings circled around the wounded, lifting them, bleeding beside them. They were loud. They were messy. They were winning. And at the heart of it, a woman with a cracked axe, a torn leg, and one working eye, still standing. The battlefield was no longer a battlefield. It was a forge, one where machines and monsters were melted down and reshaped by screams, blood, and bone. From above, from the luxury skyboxes and observation decks hovering at the arena's edges, the invited elite of the galactic empires stared in frozen disbelief. Dozens of species, hundreds of systems represented. All had come to watch the Drexari, the apex killers, cull the newest batch of underdeveloped savages. The humans had been a curiosity. Now, they were something else. A long-bodied Kasari war queen turned away from the glass and muttered. They weren't ready for this. A rust-colored being with luminous eyes whispered. They were never supposed to win. And in the corner, a younger diplomat of a peaceful race, soft-voiced, green-skinned, high-colored, simply asked, "Then what are they?" On the floor below, Zarek was falling back. Not routed, not yet, but regrouping. Their lines were shattered. Their command hierarchy had collapsed under the weight of unpredictable violence. They had trained for enemies with logic, with strategy. But this was a song. A mad, unending song of axes, screams, chants, and laughter. One of the alien generals in the command tier slammed his hand on the control table. "This isn't war," he barked. "This is ritual." And he was right. Because the Vikings didn't fight to kill, they fought to prove themselves. From high above, cameras zoomed in on the central skirmishes. They showed Viking warriors bleeding from deep wounds and still fighting. They showed Drexari trying to retreat, only to be dragged back into the fray. They showed one woman using a Drexari's own blade against him as she smiled through broken teeth. The crowd, those who had come to spectate, began to go silent. Even the betting halls stopped. No one knew what odds to place anymore. There was no system, no winner's bracket, no pattern, only chaos. And in that chaos, the humans thrived. Somewhere, a low-level analyst, not even a full diplomat, leaned forward, muttering to no one in particular. This changes everything. From orbit, thousands of data packets were being sent. Dozens of governments tuning in, all asking the same unspoken question. If this was what Earth had to offer, then what would come next? Torik's leg was shattered. Each step sent new jolts of agony through his core. The Drexari never knelt, never begged, but he was limping now, alone, unarmed, armor torn, helm discarded to show his face. A face Drexari were never supposed to show. He limped through smoke and fire toward the center line. The fighting still echoed behind him. Screams, chanting, the ring of steel on bone. But he walked forward, both hands raised, palms empty. The humans spotted him, 6 of them. Bloodied, silent, watching. They didn't attack. Not yet. He dropped to one knee, then 2. It was not tradition. It was instinct. "I yield," he said hoarsely, in galactic common. "Please, I yield." A tall Viking man with a streak of black across his face stepped forward. He stared down at Torik for what felt like forever. Then, slowly, he reached down, and pressed 2 fingers to Torik's forehead. A warrior's mark. Or a curse. Torik wasn't sure. The man spoke. Only once. In his language. Torik's translator barely caught it. "You saw it, didn't you? What we are." The Viking didn't kill him. He just turned and walked back to the fight. Torik remained kneeling, still alive. But something had died in him nonetheless. His pride, his certainty, the illusion of Drexari's supremacy. And behind him, the final command signal went out. The Drexari weren't going to retreat. They were going to try one last time. The sky above shimmered. New deployment pods dropped like meteorites, black streaks crashing into the far side of the field. Drexari elite shock troopers, those who had never lost a war, stormed from the craters, new weapons, ruthless formations. A final coordinated push, everything they had left. But now, the Vikings were ready. They stood in the ruin, shoulder to shoulder, bloodied, bruised, but grinning. And then, they began to sing again. Glory! 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 The battle wasn't over, but the war was already lost. They came in perfect formation, 200 strong, elite Drexari, untouched by previous battles, bred for this exact moment. Their armor gleamed like obsidian under the arena lights. Their steps synchronized, their breathing regulated, their targeting systems linked across a neural field of violence. This was their final answer. No more adaptation, no more underestimation. This was the purest shape of Drexari war, and they expected to crush whatever was left of the Vikings in a clean, clinical sweep. They crested the ridge with a rawless fury. Silent, smooth, absolute. But the humans didn't run. They didn't reposition. They didn't fall back. They stood still, weapons lowered, as if listening. Then one Viking raised a drinking horn and tipped it to the sky. The others followed. 100 cups, 100 howls, 100 smiles that made the Drexari hesitate. Why are they smiling? Why aren't they moving? Why? The humans moved first. No orders, no signals, just instinct, just blood memory. They charged, all of them, axes in hand, spears raised, screaming, singing, laughing. The Drexari tried to hold the line. They really did. But no formation survives contact with the insane. The humans didn't come in lines. They came like weather. A thunderstorm made of muscle and madness and fire. Forged steel. 2 Drexari squads flanked left. They were swallowed in moments. A dozen tried to leap above with jump jets. Spears pulled them back down like angry gods dragging stars from the sky. The final Drexari commander activated his full-body shield and stood his ground. 2 Vikings hit him at once, one low, one high. He fell without a word. It wasn't a battle. It was a ritual. And the arena trembled. When it was over, there was silence. Only the crackle of fires, the drip of blood. And somewhere, a Viking started to sing again. A slow, low hum. One by one, the others joined. Some limping, some dragging the bodies of their brothers. But all of them standing. The Drexari were gone. Scattered. Fallen. Surrendered. The arena, once a coliseum of judgment, had become a grave for an empire's pride. And above them, in the observation decks, no one said a word. Because how do you explain the unexplainable? This wasn't just a victory. It was a warning. The battlefield was quiet now. Ash drifted in lazy spirals. Smoke curled like ghosts rising from the dead. And amidst the ruin, the humans stood, blood-soaked, silent, unbowed. They were ancient, pulled from time like teeth from bone. No energy weapons, no nanotech, just steel, flesh, and a hunger the stars had never seen before. The observers, those who had come to witness Earth's humiliation, remained frozen in their towers. They hadn't expected victory. They hadn't expected madness, but what haunted them most was the origin of the warriors below. They're not from your time. No, they're from Earth's past. Past. 1,000 years ago. Maybe more. The revelation swept through the High Council's chamber like a contagion. Whispers, panic, a recalibration of everything they thought they knew. These weren't enhanced humans, not super soldiers. They were raw, primitive, savage, unrefined. And they still won. One elder voice spoke up from the dark. If this was what they were, then what are they now? No one answered, because Earth had gone dark after the summoning. No messages, no broadcasts, no signals, just silence, the kind that speaks of preparation, the kind that waits. And so, the tale of the 100 was carried on star winds and fractured signals. A whisper between warlords, a ghost in strategic briefings. They say the Drexari fear ancient Earth now, and that fear has spread. Some say it wasn't a battle, it was a test, and Earth passed.